Welcome back, everybody, to Markonomics 101 presents Hoot Loot, the show where you come to be informed, be amused, but never be misled. Why am I wearing these? Because of what you just saw a minute ago. I had the stupidity to look at cable news and almost went crazy. I had to go to the eye doctor. He gave me these protective goggles, but what the hell? I risk my life for you. I will do it every day of the week. So today's show is called The Bitcoin Mysteries. Part 1, and we're going to talk at the very end of the show about some things about Bitcoin, the thing that you can't stop talking about that you ought to know and you ought to ask yourself before you decide what to do. But before then, we're going to go to the charts and we're going to take a look at the market. Not as much has changed as I would have thought, but nonetheless, the market's always in motion. We're going to talk about it. Please like and subscribe up here, and we'll be right back in a minute and with the charts. Welcome back. We're going to look at the charts. Of course, we're going to start with Bitcoin because this is the Bitcoin Mysteries Part 1. If you look at Bitcoin here, we had a little bit of a break from the ascending wedge. That is what we expected. And then we had a little bit of a bounce. So right now, Bitcoin has had a low above a low. So that's positive, but it's still well below its high. So right now, I would say, it could go either way. I don't think it's going to make new highs, but I don't know, and we'll just have to see. Anyway, this is what everybody talks about. Maybe I should ask Paris Hilton because she seems to know. The Dow Jones Industrials, they look like they've broken down from the ascending wedge that we talked about. Right at the very end, you see a red circle. Now, they didn't really break sharply, but many stocks broke sharply, and we're going to show you some of those. But this now looks like it has run out of gas, and it's just sort of right at the top of the hill, kind of going, and that's the way the market looks like to me from some of the charts. And hopefully we'll convince you of that too. The NASDAQ 100 is still kind of chugging up itself. It's barely made a new high, but not much. And every NASDAQ company reported earnings this week, and we had some incredibly different reactions to that. And we're going to show you that in a minute too. The S&P 500, it's starting to look more ascending wedge-ish than it had before. But again, if this was the only chart I looked at, I think we're in a damn good bull market, and this thing could go on for a while. I don't believe that because of other things that are taken in context, and that's what you got to do. You got to make sure that you consider the entire picture and you consider the weight of the evidence. If it was just this, I'd be bullish as hell, but it isn't just this. There's a lot of things weighing the other way. The S&P small caps, they look like, now I've drawn it a little differently this time. It does look like a bear flag. It doesn't look like a rounded top exactly, but we'll see. Next week ought to be very indicative because the earnings reports this week are all out, the major ones. Next week there's a few, but pretty much the market's going to move the way it's going to move. In other words, next week will determine the direction of the market, I do believe. In other words, the market always goes, or the news goes with the trend is what I'm trying to say. If the earnings reports are fabulous, but the market goes down, that usually is interpreted as they weren't good enough. If the earnings reports are fabulous and the market goes up, they're fabulous. So, that's kind of how people look at it in hindsight. And really the trend is the trend, and how you interpret the trend is quite another story. The US dollar is really starting to fall apart. It's all that stimulus that's going on for sure. Stimulus, which of course I haven't gotten. Oh, sorry about that. My shrink tells me I really need to meditate more because I'm so mad about those stimulus checks. I got a little bit of Tourette syndrome from watching cable news and hearing about stimulus checks, but I'll try to maintain here. Okay. All right. So crude oil looks like it's actually moving up, and crude oil is such a big input in all the goods out there that you got to watch this really carefully. I don't think it's going to go back down. I think that with the dollar weakness that's coming up, crude is just going to be priced higher. Unleaded gasoline, same thing. It's just still going up its uptrend line, consolidating a little bit. Can't go up every single day, but it's doing pretty well. Copper miners, copper's hitting a new high. And there's nothing more to say. Just about anything that's a metal that's not gold is going up like crazy. I don't know why gold isn't going up like crazy. That's something for historians maybe. But here's the one that is probably the most bothersome. The agriculture fund is showing you that food prices are going through the roof. And that includes McDonald's and Coke and all the companies that are making food products and personal care products. They're seeing shortages of their inputs, higher prices for their inputs, and they're passing them along. So they see it, they're raising their prices, and there's only one person in the whole United States that doesn't see it. And his name is Jay Powell. He sees no evil, hears no evil, says no evil. The base metals also continue up. Anything that's a metal that's used to produce something, with the exception of gold, of course, is going up. Even silver is doing pretty well, but not as well as it could. And again, inflation, although it's been sort of depicted at 2%, I think you can kind of count on it being more like 7 or 8 if you really look at what people buy. Palladium, again, another metal going through the roof, largely because of its industrial use, and it's hard to get now. This is gold. Now I put 20 years here to put it in more context. If you put it in a year, it looks terrible. It doesn't look so good here either. But it did make a rounded bottom. It does look like it's a possible bull flag. I want to be bullish on gold. I can't be bullish on gold, unfortunately, and look at these charts. I mean, you just cannot walk away with a good feeling about it. But what you do know is gold is in limited supply, the dollar's in unlimited supply, and it's even more unlimited by the day. And so how on earth gold is going down in this environment is beyond me. Silver is going sideways. I think it will break up ultimately because it's not being knocked down. It has industrial use, and it has very limited production these days. 5-year Treasury yields, these are starting to go back up after a little bit of a correction. They went up the last couple of days of the week. Thank you to Jay Powell, of course, who has told the market that he sees no inflation, and until he actually sees it, okay, he's not going to touch interest rates till at least 2022. So in other words, because he doesn't see it, and because it doesn't exist, so no reason to raise interest rates, even though the economy is cooking like crazy, and he'll be the first to tell you that it's strong everywhere, but there's no inflation, but it's too weak to raise interest rates. Okay, yeah, I kind of got that. 10-year treasuries are looking like they're about to resume their uptrend here. We told you they should hold like 155. They did, and now I would guess that they're about to break the 2% mark. That's still low, by the way. That is horrendously historically low. Look for a 10-year rate of 5% at least before this cycle is over, at least. And the 10-year ultimately ought to trade at about 2% above expected inflation. So if we see inflation at about 6 or 8, this thing should trade at more like 8 to 10. And you know, if this thing gets up to 8 or 10, that's going to squash multiples from like 50 to 15. Okay, a 70% drop is what you're going to see with no necessarily decrease in business. It's just going to be the fact that they can't trade as much as their earnings potential because there's competitive assets that are returning much more, like treasuries. 30 years too, they're going up, or they consolidated, but they're still above their trend line. They're going to go up too, I do believe. Now we're going to look at some of the companies that reported this week. This is Apple Computer. I shouldn't call it Apple Computer. It's Apple Everything. They basically own the world. Apple blew out their earnings. They had like the best earnings you could imagine for a company that's worth $2.2 trillion with a T. And they're in a big, wide, long, bear flag. They didn't even go up on the earnings news. Okay, this earnings news was so good, they didn't even go up on that. They went down. And it wasn't down a lot, but that was what I was talking about last week. It's about the spread. In football, you bet which team will beat the spread, not which team will win. In the case of when earnings reports come out, in case of Apple, well, the spread is kind of what the analysts say. The analysts are all bullish on it, so the spread's considered pretty high. And that's why a company like Apple, they really can't exceed expectations because these people out there are just foaming at the mouth with bullishness about it. Apple's going to take over the world. So, you know, keep on it. Amazon had a great earnings report too. And look at that. It actually broke out above that resistance line at about 3,400 or 3,500, and it went back down through it. Amazon actually went back down through it. So that's not a good sign. You would have wanted to see Amazon continue up with a huge burst, like a gap, and then that would have been a good sign. That would have then pointed to the likelihood, more likelihood, of the NASDAQ rallying. Now that it's not done that on the best possible news it could have, and they put everybody out of business. Thank you, Uncle Sam. Amazon is now practically a monopoly. They had everything their way. So if that didn't push it up through this resistance line, what is? Facebook had a blowout earnings, and boy, I have to say, this bugs me more than anything else because they're truth tellers. Just they're truth tellers. What can I say? But look at that. That's the kind of move, a gap up move on a good earnings report. That's what tells you that there's momentum to the stock. That's what should have happened with Apple if it was going to go up. So Facebook alone cannot pull the market up, but it's still an important company approaching, believe it or not, $1 trillion in value. Google also, this one has actually started possibly on its way down. I don't know, but this one had a very good earnings report. Didn't do too much on it because everybody expected it. So it basically was built in. Microsoft, it had a great earnings report and broke down. See that little ellipse in red? Well, Microsoft is back on its way down, and that's kind of what we predicted because the ascending flag was really kind of a bear flag, and this thing was getting really super hot. And there was no way that you were going to be able to beat expectations when expectations are you're going to earn trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars because you're a monopoly. Netflix also reported, and they're still stuck in the middle of their trading range. This is very symptomatic of the market. Lots of companies look just like this, and when they break, it's going to be a big one. That's the point. They're now basically poised for a big break. I don't know when that will be. It's longer than I thought it would be. I thought it would have occurred by now, but it's going to be big. Tesla also, same kind of thing. Bear flag. I don't want to go into too much detail, other than the fact that I understand the fourth Mars helicopter flew, as predicted the other day, and I still don't know how they got the helicopter to Mars in the first place, or the Mars rover. And my remote control for my TV doesn't work more than like 8 feet. So how on earth did they get a remote control to fly a helicopter millions and millions of miles away is beyond me. I won't ask any more questions. The bank index, these guys are actually looking pretty good still. And what we're seeing is that the banks and financial companies are starting to actually fracture from the tech. So you might actually see a period where banks actually do well, continue to rise, maybe not a lot, but tech is going to be a bigger and bigger drag. So will interest rates eventually on banks. Even if they're rallying because interest rates are going up, they're still going to drag them down eventually because interest rates higher mean asset prices lower. The interest rate is not a good or bad thing. It is only the rate that savers get paid to save, or borrowers charged to lend, or lenders charged to lend. And so it's really a market clearing number. Consumers like it low, politicians like it low because consumers like it low, and consumers elect politicians. So politicians will always put pressure on the Fed to keep it low, and the Fed loves to cater to politicians because they're so independent after all. The Dow Jones REIT index, this is a little barometer of real estate. Real estate, some people are calling it a bubble. I don't believe it is. I mean, there are bubbles all over the damn place, but not here. The reason I think real estate's going up has to do with the dollar going down, and it's a hard asset and it's a commodity. Nothing new there. Real estate can go to 3 times as high if the dollar continues to act as weakly as it does. The broker-dealer index is coming to the pinnacle of an ascending wedge. It may be finally time that this thing's going to break down. We'll see. It's right there. For this thing to break up is going to be really hard. Home builders. Now, this is an interesting one. I haven't put in too much lately, but lumber prices we talked about last week. Lumber prices have gone up by 400% year over year. Copper prices have gone up something like 600% year over year. And if you think about a home, how much lumber goes into a home, plywood and everything else. I have hardwood floors. When you think about that being in short supply and going up 4 times, that's significant. People will not be able to afford homes, but home builders are going up because they get higher prices because people are using those stimulus checks of $1,400 to buy homes with. Probably not, but who knows? American Express started to look like it was breaking down, and lo and behold, the banks and the credit card companies continue to be strong. People are spending that money. They don't want to hold on to it. What's interesting about this cycle is that the minute people get money in their hands, they seem to immediately spend it. That's why we're seeing such bottlenecks and such shortages and the appearance of a healthy economy. It appears that way, but it's not that way. For it to be healthy, we'd have to be producing a lot of goods, and we're not. The reason I know that is because all of our ports are backlogged because people are buying imported goods, because those people are still making them, and we have lockdowns and restrictions and masks and this and that, so goods are not being made. The fact that the economy is going to grow is a function of how it's measured. 70% based on the consumer, and the consumer has all this money in their hands, so they're going to spend it. So it's going to look like the economy is growing. It's going to look like it, but it really is not healthy growth. CVS, this is a drugstore chain. Here's where you go to get your jab if you want some poison in your body. And this thing is an ascending wedge. I'm guessing that it breaks down, but we'll see. CVS is, again, another retailer, a major retailer, although used to be called a drugstore, but now now they sell just about everything. Delta Airlines, this is why the transportations are, the transportations, I don't understand. The transportation index continues to be strong, but Delta Airlines, here's a company that they fly about half the number of miles they flew a year ago, and that's supposed to be great news. They tell you that business travel is not coming back. It isn't. We have Zoom. Who wants to get on a plane and have a colonoscopy by the TSA and then have to go somewhere and wear a stupid mask on the plane and then be berated if you take the mask off to breathe? I don't, and I think business travel is cooked. And right now, we have a lot of lockdowns from foreign countries, like India now. Countries are not accepting Indians. So, because there's apparently the flu has broken out there too. Discover Financial is a credit card company. Look at that, just burst up. That is a stimulus. That is a stimulus related type of burst. I don't think it's going to last because, unless we just start cranking out stimulus checks week after week, and they're talking like that might happen. Oh God, if that happened, that's a disaster. I don't even want to talk about. Dow Holdings is a beneficiary of infrastructure being built, so that's why I put that there. Still in a healthy uptrend. These are among the few companies that are benefiting, and the reason they're benefiting is because we're going to throw so much money at them, to build bridges and roads and schools and who knows what. Ford is finally looks like it's breaking down. Ford has been gone up for a long time. I don't know why. I think because of this EV hope, electronic vehicle hope. But it looks like it's breaking down, and so does Stellantis. Stellantis, which had one more leg up, looks like it broke down out of an ascending wedge, which is kind of what we were expecting to happen eventually. General Motors is kind of neutral right now, and I drew in the two blue lines as kind of like congestion lines. We talked last week about support and resistance. Those are places where a lot of transactions have taken place, and you see either a bounce up or a bounce down. The reason for that is there's a cluster of transactions that occur right around these points. And to get through them means that you have to go through more, it takes more work to go through them, either above or below. But when that happens, it's significant. Because like in the case of Amazon, if that thing should break down below 2,900, everybody that bought in that entire 9-month sideways move is underwater. And that's big. Now, if it had broken up, that would also be big, but it did for only about 5 seconds. JP Morgan, here's the only bank that doesn't look that good, really, to me. The other banks are looking pretty good, so we'll see. We're going to keep an eye on this. I'm not sure banks have that much left to go, but they do continue to have positive chart patterns. So, this one does not, but we'll see. Nordstrom, again, this is a retailer that keeps coming back, and there's a key resistance at 34. It kind of bounces off it. That's what I mean by a cluster. It bounces off at 34 over and over and over. So if it breaks down below 34, everybody that's in that kind of dome top, or the dome of doom, or as I call it sometimes, everybody that's in there is going to be underwater. And that's why these formations that hold stocks in the same price range are so important, because of what they do to the people that bought during those formations. MasterCard, also looking really good. Here's another stimulus for you. Okay. 3M Company broke down from an ascending wedge, just as predicted. I guess they don't want as many post-it notes as was predicted. But 3M, look at that. That thing was just screaming, and all of a sudden is broken down from an ascending wedge in a gap. And that's kind of what happens an awful lot. They just run out of juice, run out of gas, and that's what happens. And it's a Dow component, a major company. So this is one definitely to keep an eye on. Target has had a little bit of a run up, but it too looks like there's only so much stimulus it can take. And I got to tell you, Target has done a great job of staying alive in this environment where other retailers have not done as good a job. But it's about at its peak, I do believe. United Airlines, again, another transportation company. What can you say? They're losing money faster than faster than can be printed. And the stocks and the company still says it's going to be a while before business returns to any kind of reasonable normal levels. And international travel, especially business travel, especially, those are the money makers. They don't make a whole lot of money if I fly to Las Vegas, for example. UPS, and this one is broken up. Okay, now this is one of those that says maybe there's some strength in the marketplace. This one I would not have expected to go up and burst out of that little trend channel, but that's a good sign for the company. They posted good earnings. They must be delivering packages to the right addresses for a change, and maybe those brown uniforms got them a few extra buyers. Who knows? Raytheon is a defense company. It used to be called United Technologies. It's in the Dow. It's in also a long ascending wedge. War's good business, so companies like this always have demand, but we do expect that at some point it will break down, but not imminently right now. And finally, Walmart. Now, the reason I put Walmart in here a little bit differently is I want to give you an idea. I want to do just a little bit of science here. Walmart had a move, and I drew it with that blue arrow. The move was from 152 to 126 from top to bottom. That was about 26 points. So now, if Walmart is going to start downward on the next leg, and you expect it to be roughly 26 points, that gives you a target of about 114. We'll see how that works out. And in any event, we're going to have the Bitcoin mysteries for you in just a minute, so hold on tight because the best part's coming right out. All right, so are you ready for the Bitcoin mysteries? I hope so, because they are real mysteries, and I'm not just pulling your leg, although if there were a leg around to pull, I might do it. First of all, who created it? Supposedly, it is a fictional character named Satoshi Nakamoto. He doesn't exist. A guy named Craig Wright claimed credit in about 2015 in an interview with the BBC. An Australian entrepreneur, he claimed credit for creating Bitcoin, but wants nothing to do with it, owns 1 million of them, supposedly, which would be worth about $50 billion, making him among the richest men in the world. But he wants nothing to do with it, wants no money from it, wants to be left alone, and supposedly convinced some people that he actually had the code that created Bitcoin. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I still have a lot of problems with it because he has not been heard from since, and he is not acting like somebody that created something that was that revolutionary. So that's one of my questions. Now, the other thing is, why was it created with no ability to retrieve a password? You can lose your Bitcoin if you lose your password or your key. It's called a key. And there have been millions lost, supposedly. We don't know how many Bitcoins are in existence right now because some have been lost, some have been seized by the FBI. The FBI apparently is one of the largest holders. The FBI might hold as much as 10% of the Bitcoin out there. Of course, it's not disclosed. We don't know how many exist, how many have been lost. If they're in a cell phone and the cell phone burns, they're lost. They're gone. You're not going to get them. So we don't know how many there are. And finally, you got to ask yourself this question, okay? Why hasn't the IRS had a problem with this? Why hasn't the Department of Treasury had a problem with this? Why hasn't the president had a problem with this? Why hasn't Congress had a problem with this? Why is it that all the banks and Treasury and Fed, nobody says anything about shutting it down, yet it's supposedly this big threat? I don't know. If you know the answer to that, please enlighten me, because I sure don't. We've created something called Hootcoin, and Hootcoin, we've got a bunch of them stored upstairs, and we're going to start showing you those pretty soon, and those are a work of art. You'll know exactly how many there are. Ah!